welcome to what should be a fascinating session here at PandaConf. I'm delighted to be joined by such distinguished panelists. Could we start with a few introductions? Could you both tell us a little bit about yourselves and what it is you do? Eyal, you go first.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eyal Baumel. I'm the CEO of Yula. We're a network of content creators and influencers, and we're a development platform for new brands, products, and experiences. On the network side, we have a YouTube MCN, a multi-channel network of 5,000 creators that generates around 8 billion monthly views. And we monetize the network via advertisement, programmatic on YouTube, and also working with advertisers directly to create branded content. On the development side, we work with top strategic content creators and influencers and invest in them to develop new brands and products.
Reza.
Okay. I'm Reza Izzat. I'm the CEO of Studio 71. We're one of the world's largest creators of short-form content that's distributed on social platforms. Like Eyal, we run a fairly large network on YouTube. We do about 10 billion monthly views. To contextualize that, in the United States, that means about a third of the country watches our content for over an hour and a half every month. So we've got significant reach and penetration and engagement with consumers. Our business is very international, so we have offices in Berlin, London, Paris, Milan. We're partnered with several large European broadcasters like ProSieben, TF1, and Mediaset. And so we have a fairly robust offering on a global basis. And the conversations about influencers, and we do about 1,000 branded content campaigns a year with a number of brands from Amazon and Google to General Motors and a ton of sort of emerging brands. And influencers play a central role in that execution.
So ever expanding.
Yeah.
So as everyone knows, we're going to be talking about influencers, and you can submit your questions via Slido. We'll come to those at the end, but first of all, big question for both of you. What makes an influencer? What is it you're looking for when you're working with talent? Reza, let's come to you first.
For us, like in the business of branded content, it's organic reach, right? Or a really unique voice in content creation. So that's influence for us. There's lots of different forms of influence, right? Musicians have tremendous influence on culture and fashion. Obviously, actors do as well as politicians. So where we're focused is in the sort of social content creation sphere, where people have an ability to tell a story, engage an audience, and we're the intersection of where does the brand play into that story and narrative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eyal, what about you? What's an influencer to you?
Yeah, I agree with Reza. If you think about influencers, there are different types of influencers. Donald Trump is probably the biggest influencer today, but the way that our businesses works, we are focused on influencers that have big audience on social media and can obviously influence the audience in different ways, either to consume the content, buy products, go to meet them in different places. So people that their content and their message resonate well with the audience, and the audience wants to either be their friend, be like them, or listen to them.
You mentioned there that the audience wanted to be their friend. I mean, that idea of authenticity is so important to the influencer market. But how do you measure it? How can you tell if someone has an authentic following online and is being authentic online?
I think it's pretty obvious. After you do it for a while, you see the engagement that this influencer have with their audience, and you can see it doesn't matter if it's a production of 5 people or a guy with his iPhone just talking about his life, but when someone is authentic and has his own format, he sees how it resonates with the audience and the engagement that he gets. So everybody talks about authenticity, and I think you see which influencers are the one that the audience really like the message and connect to them and feel like they're their friends. We see, even you can read the comments, and you can see that these people that sits all over the world really feel that Logan Paul or whoever the influencer is really their friends, and they live their life.
So what are the platforms?
So can I just add one thing?
Oh, yeah, of course.
In performance marketing, which is a big part of what we do, it's very easy to see and track and measure who can drive clicks and who can actually drive into the conversion funnel from sales. So there's actually, over time, we've built a ton of data in terms of who can actually affect a sale or an engagement, meaning brands are often using this talent to do store openings and things like that. So who can bring the crowd very efficiently to a physical location? So there's a lot of ways to figure it out beyond just the word authenticity. It's really who can make the audience sort of make the moves that a brand is looking for. And at this point, there's a ton of data available on that in our community and frankly across the web.
So you can really demonstrate that ROI.
100%. Assuming the campaign is performance driven, right? A lot of campaigns are brand lift or brand awareness driven, and that's dependent on a lot more research. But if you're able to move down into the funnel where you're looking for a conversion, mobile apps are a good example of that. There's tremendous data on who will and who won't move the needle for you out there already.
And when it comes to the platforms that influencers are working on, which platforms to you are the most appealing? Is video still vital and is YouTube still king there?
I think that we have a big YouTube MCNs, so we might be biased, but I think YouTube is by far the best platform for obviously video, but generally speaking, YouTube created the biggest monetization engine for user-generated content of all time. And there is no even second if you think about how you monetize on the platform. You can monetize branded content on Instagram, on Facebook, and Snapchat, but as a platform to monetize, YouTube is by far the best platform and the biggest platform. If you think about it, more than 1.8 billion are assigned into YouTube every month. It's insane. So I think YouTube is the best platform. Instagram is a great platform, and I think the most engaged now, but it's different type of content that you need to create in order to be successful on YouTube. Instagram is much easier to create content to. YouTube is a bit more complicated, but the upside is much bigger on the platform side.
Do you agree, Reza?
Yeah, essentially, look, the YouTube environment is set up to monetize third-party content. They do that very well. So essentially, they're stoking all the content creation you see on the web for the most part. Instagram, the reality is the data sets that you get from Instagram in terms of matching up, because I'm looking at one of these questions, matching up your brand to an influencer, it's a lot simpler, and therefore for brands it's a lot easier to make a very linear choice, right? I'm going to make a cosmetic buy, I want to buy a handful of influencers, I'm looking for reach and impressions. It's very easy to identify that community and pull that data out. I think in YouTube you got to dig a little further to find it, and I think like Ayel said, was execution is more complex when you're doing video versus an Instagram story or even a picture.
So following on from that, something that you have both done, which is very interesting, is be incredibly nimble. And I'd like to ask you a little about the diversification that you've embraced. You've experimented with podcasts, with long form. Can you tell us about that and why it's important?
We actually started in long form, right? So the first things we ever were involved with were projects where we were taking content from YouTube and selling it to broadcast. So the origin story of the company was built on the Fred movies, which were in 2010 the most successful movies on all of television in the United States. And so long form has always been a part of what we do. Podcasting, distributing short form, on other platforms outside of, sort of the social platforms is a business that we see as growing rapidly. What we're seeing is huge consumption in OTT in the U.S. Apps like, companies like Roku are driving a ton of consumption in short form content. Amazon Prime actually is driving a ton of consumption. And those aren't ads, those are different environments for us to be in and ones that we're pretty excited to grow in.
And Eyal, you've recently signed a series of deals in China. Can you tell us about that and what some of the challenges that presents are?
Sure. So China is a very interesting market, as that's the only place pretty much on the planet that there is no access to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all the big social media platforms, and it's the biggest market. So we talked about where our audience is, and we have no audience in China a year ago when we decided to look into China. So we're working with different content creators and publishers, even NBA teams, to help them get more exposure in China, develop the audience there. We have partnerships with the local platforms. And the next step, and it's very connected to the challenges in China, is that we want to explore e-commerce. in China and outside of China. But in China, if you have a lot of views on your content, you're not going to make money from the platform. So on YouTube, you have a lot of good views, you're going to make money. In China, you will not. And the way to monetize in China is a bit differently. Branded content is one way, but also e-commerce is a big opportunity in China that we are looking into. And overall, the direct-to-consumer model is something that we are very enthusiastic about because we think there is a big opportunity to leverage the big audience that networks like us have to create new brands and new products that we can monetize direct-to-consumer.
So when you are dealing with either direct-to-consumer or the branded content side of things, how do you manage brand safety? There have been concerns about advertisers threatening to pull spending from influencer content if it's not moderated to their standards. How do you make sure that they meet brand safety standards? Either of you.
We had to build for. And brand safety has two different applications, right? There's the influencer marketing side, and then there's the media adjacency side. So on the media adjacency side, we built a whole tech stack, actually, to view every piece of content that's published by our third-party creators out there, and we have human review. So that's for all our media partners. We traffic ads on a literally video-by-video level. This is kind of getting technical, so that we're never having any sort of issues around adjacency in advertising. Brand safety with an influencer, is equally as complex. You've got, I think, 2 or 3 things. You got to go way back in the history of the influencer, sometimes many years, to see things that you want to avoid. We've been building a fairly large database of the talent that we work with directly. And so you got to manage around that pretty carefully. So it requires a lot of tech and tools to do it effectively.
And Eyal, what's your approach?
Yeah, very similar to Reza. We just make sure that, especially when we work directly with advertisers and brands, that we look into the pool of talent that we work with and make sure that, first of all, we have experience working with these guys, we know their content, and we know that it's brand safe, and we also know that they can deliver. Because sometimes one of the challenges working with influencers, a lot of them are very young, and some of them has issues in delivering what they promise sometimes. So we want to make sure that when we commit to a brand and advertiser, we know that we can deliver, and from the brand side and from the influencer actual content creation side.
Well, that leads us rather neatly to one of the questions that has been submitted. I can see it there. What are your thoughts on influencers who do not disclose adverts?
In the United States, that's against the law.
Right.
So we don't do that. That's a fundamental part of what we do. So that's an easy one to answer.
Same.
Yeah. It's mandatory.
Okay.
And I would assume in Europe it's even more complex. I should know, but I'm not in the weeds like that. So.
And there's another one that's been submitted that I'm very interested in because we were talking about this before we came on stage, which is the rise of the micro-influencer. These are people with very small but highly engaged followings. How do you see their role evolving in the coming years?
Well, micro-influencers is something that many companies are trying to figure out. A lot of marketplaces and softwares were developed to solve the problem of how do you scale micro-influencers campaign. YouTube acquired a company called FameBit that tried to solve it. I don't see a great solution yet. For companies like us, we obviously work on big budgets, and sometimes we mix big influencers, small influencers. I think it's going to grow, but I don't see now yet a great solution to scale micro-influencers.
Okay.
Look, micro-influence is a totally misnomer. Like, never in the history of influence has anyone gone towards the smallest audiences, typically, right? Especially when you're trying to do broad reach. I get it if you're trying to sell a very specific, highly technical or specialized product. So they're not in the same category. And the reality is, given the focus on micro-influencers, the pricing per impression in micro and macro, if that's a thing, is actually become, there's a lot of parity. We track this for a lot of the companies we work for and pricing models. Where micro is really valuable is cheap content creation of high value to a certain consumer set that you have to boost with media spend. You're going to have to take control of that asset and push it out into the marketplace in a paid media campaign. So they're very efficient from the perspective of getting lots of content. You can then test that content. What works is what becomes the campaign for the brand. Large-scale influencers, think about that much more as an endorsement, right? It is somebody who, without the paid support, can drive a lot of attention to your brand. And then if you have a long-term relationship with them, that continuity, I think, becomes a big part of the storytelling that they have with their consumers and hopefully translates to the brand in sales. Like if you're familiar with Casey Neistat, he has a very large relationship with Samsung. It's in the content consistently over the course of now many years. And so it's familiar to the audience, and I know when I'm buying Samsung products, there's a connection there. And I think there's many examples of that working successfully. So
micro, I can take from this, is very useful when it comes to niche targeting, but not going to revolutionize things.
Not independently, without huge budgets and support, and I think actually a lot of A/B testing, right? You're going to want to buy a lot of, you're not going to want to do a little bit of micro content. You want to do a lot of it. You're going to want to boost that through social, see what actually works tied to what your campaign is, and go with the few things that work. I mean, if you're familiar with electoral, sort of how elections are won these days on Facebook, it's that writ large, right? Lots and lots of pieces of content pushed out, and then really, driving the ones that work and pulling back on the things that don't work. So it takes a lot actually to execute micro campaigns effectively.
So on that note, final question: what is going to revolutionize the industry? What are the exciting developments that you are looking forward to over the coming years? Reza, let's start with you and then go to Eyal.
The data side of it is getting really, really interesting. We're starting to be able to build highly predictive models because we're publishing so much content, and we're getting to the place where we can do it tied to subject types. So we can tell you when a Lily Singh video is going to perform at what level based on subject she's dealing with. And that's very, very interesting for us. So there's going to be more prediction that I think we're going to be able to do, and that's going to lead to better and stronger recommendation for brands who are going to engage with us. So that's sort of where we see the data side is the most interesting at the moment.
Eyal, and what about you?
I think what's the most exciting part about the business moving forward for us is the direct-to-consumer, and how do you diversify and expand the brand of an influencer or a publisher or a creator. Yesterday, I heard here someone from the Cartoon Network saying that they're going to open a hotel. So a Cartoon Network, a content creator for kids, now opening a hotel. And I think that's where the big opportunity is moving forward, to create brands and products that are based on the influencers, the creator, and really expand not just the monetization, but the experience for the fan via products, IP, events, whatever it is. So that's what we are excited about.
So lots of exciting things ahead. On that note, thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you to our lovely audience.
Thanks.
Enjoy your lunch break.
Thanks.